Hello everybody and welcome to the channel. It's Paulie Esther here, and today we're going to talk about niche horror licenses and whether or not they have a place in Dead by Daylight, and we're going to talk about one specific niche horror license in particular by the name of Phantasm. But first I want to talk about the sponsor of today's video, Opera GX and GX Mobile. This is the browser that's made for gamers for PC and for mobile devices. With GX Control, you can keep your tabs open but not hurt your gaming performance by limiting the amount of RAM and CPU that you're going to let the browser use. And on top of that, you can get gains while streaming or gaming by choosing how much bandwidth you're going to let the browser use. Compared to some of the other browsers, this can be a real performance booster. The sidebar has all your favorite social media integrations here, whether you want to click onto Twitch and see which of your favorite streamers is streaming right now, or if you want to check your Twitter or your Discord, you can do it all right here, built in on the sidebar. And for ease of accessibility, whether you use Spotify, Apple Music, or YouTube Music, you can use the GX player built in on the sidebar to access all your favorite tunes. This is just the tip of the iceberg what you can do with Opera GX, and don't forget the GX Mobile, which you can connect to your desktop version. Take the computing power back for your devices. Download Opera GX for free. The link is in the description now. I don't think you're going to regret it as a gamer. Now, back to the video. Now, when discussing the horror licenses that Dead by Daylight may be pursuing, or even the ones that they've already landed, I've always been of the opinion that the license needs to be widely known to bring value. And what I mean by that is that it has to be something that the majority of the player base is familiar with to encourage them to buy it. We've seen examples of this that really brought people to the game, such as Resident Evil, Stranger Things. Those are like some top tier licenses. Obviously, Halloween, Freddy Krueger, those things are very well known and have brought people to the game because of their interest in those properties. And there are a few of the top tier licenses that are out there, most definitely still. Some are more problematic than others to get at this point. Jason would be obviously top of the pile to get, and then we have Xenomorph from Aliens, Chucky. There's a few of those that are top tier out there like that. Now, if a license is too niche, I've always felt, and I think that interviews with Matthew Cote and Dave Richard bear this out, that if it's too niche, then it doesn't really warrant the amount of licensing money they would have to spend to acquire said license, because it's very debatable on whether or not it would bring value to the game, bring the fans of that particular license to the game to warrant the money you would spend on the license. And I think that they've always felt like if something is too niche, they would just rather keep their hands off of it and make their own creation instead, an original chapter where they don't have to spend any licensing money on it and they own it outright. Now, just as there is a top of the pile of the A-lister licenses, there's definitely a top of the pile of these lesser known niche licenses too. But is that enough to warrant the interest of Dead by Daylight? And if we are talking about these cult classic lesser known niche licenses, I would say at the top of the pile you would probably have to put the franchise called Phantasm. If you're unfamiliar with Phantasm, Phantasm is an American horror film series that consists of 5 films. It's mainly about the Tall Man, a supernatural, malevolent undertaker, and the main antagonist who turns the dead into dwarf zombies to do his bidding and take over the world. And you can see here the 5 films in the franchise range from 1979 to Phantasm 2, 1988, Phantasm 3, 1994, Phantasm 4, 1998, and most recently Phantasm 5 in 2016. So this is a film series that has spanned decades and has maintained a cult following. And so the reason I bring this up has to do with this forums post that was brought to my attention by Smo over here on the Dead by Daylight official forums, entitled DBD should do a collaboration with Phantasm. That's the original movie poster. And Smo goes on to say, this game is supposed to be the Hall of Fame of horror, however, it is far from complete as several franchises are still missing as of yet. One of those franchises is Phantasm. For those who don't know what Phantasm is, it is an American sci-fi fantasy horror film series that consists of 5 films, novels, comic books, and merchandise. I think this is just taken off the wiki. It's mainly about the Tall Man, a supernatural and malevolent undertaker, and the main antagonist who turns the dead into dwarf zombies to do his bidding and take over the world. He's opposed by Mike Pearson and his friend Reggie, who pursues and takes up the fight against the Tall Man to put an end to his reign of terror for good. The film was released in 1979, generally receiving positive reviews, and has become a cult classic. It is regarded as one of the most unique horror franchises out there due to its dreamlike, surreal narrative and imagery. Let's just watch like a minute of the original trailer here.
Okay, I believe you.
What we gotta do is lay that sucker out flat and drive a stake right through his goddamn heart.
We're gonna run that tall bastard straight down to hell.
You play a good game, boy. But the game is finished. Now you die.
Phantasm.
Fear.
The post goes on to share the trailers for the subsequent films, Phantasm 2 through 5. I personally have only ever seen Phantasm 1. I'm not going to show you all these trailers, but the most interesting bit of this post here is at the bottom, where it says Don Coscarelli, who is the creator of Phantasm, is open for a video game adaptation of Phantasm, so now's the perfect time to bring this piece of horror history to Dead by Daylight. And sure enough, if you go to Don's Twitter account here, it says, the most common question I get about Phantasm is, when will there be a video game, and what better time than now? And to all my friends in the video game industry, my DMs are open, and to all the fans, reply to this thread and tag who would do it justice. So I'm going to leave the link to this tweet in the first pinned comment and in the description if you want to go over to Twitter and let Don know that, and tag Dead by Daylight too, if you want Don to work with behavior and bring the Tall Man to Dead by Daylight. Because the property is obviously available and there isn't a lot of red tape. Don owns it all. Similar to the Elvira situation where Elvira owns her likeness. You only have to deal with one person, and they're basically saying that they want the Tall Man in a video game. So it's up to us to decide if we want it. Now, I have some questions about this. Again, it brings up this whole niche aspect of it. Is there enough interest to warrant acquiring the license to bring value to Dead by Daylight? My worry would be that perhaps the franchise is too old. Now, while it has had its most recent installment in 2016, the original came out in 1979, and I just question whether or not the property is too old at this point. Arguably, the Hellraiser license was maybe on the cusp of being too old. I saw a lot of players when we were talking about the speculation of Hellraiser coming out that many of our player base didn't even have any familiarity whatsoever with the Hellraiser franchise, which I believe is almost 10 years later in 1987, 1988. Don't sue me for getting the year wrong, but it's, you know, it's more recent, even though it's quite a bit older than Phantasm's beginning in 1979. There definitely is a significant amount of interest in seeing the Phantasm franchise come to Dead by Daylight. Some people have even gone so far as to create their own chapter outlines on Reddit. Here we see VK2305 has created a Phantasm chapter, the Tall Man, and we see Jebediah Morningside here as the Mortician in Dead by Daylight. They lay out their own vision for what a Phantasm chapter would be. And actually, a lot of the mechanics that exist in Dead by Daylight right now could be converted into powers for the Mortician. You see the Sentinel Sphere is the power that is proposed here, and this would work similar to the way that we see Pinhead's chain work, is that the Mortician would let the sphere go and control it to chase after survivors. We see that theme in this chapter design as well by Resolution Blaze. This is for fans of the Phantasm series and niche horror films galore. The original concept of this was similar to the Twins when I came up with it, and by now the original thread is almost a year old, so I'm remaking it with some additions. So that's what I had initially thought when the Twins came out, is that you could have repurposed the Twins as letting the sphere go out and the tall man would stand there. But I think probably with the Hellraiser chapter coming, using Pinhead's chain mechanic is a better use for the sphere. And also with the dwarf zombies that you see in the Phantasm franchise, we have the zombies for Nemesis, so you could have a couple of little minions of dwarf zombies walking around the map as well. And also, I don't know if this touches on it, but also we have the dimensional forks in the Phantasm franchise. Here we see Reggie using the dimensional forks, which teleport to the red dimension. The dimensional forks could also be brought into the game as a way for the tall man to traverse the map, and you could even have a different kind of a mechanic here where the survivors could use the dimensional forks to move from one side of the map to the other, as well as kind of a mind game cat and mouse mechanic using that. So between portals and zombies and the controllable weapon with the Hellraiser chain as a sentinel sphere, we already have the existing mechanics in the game to use for the tall man. So I guess at the end of the day, what it comes down to is, do we want a Phantasm chapter? Do we want the tall man in Dead by Daylight? And if we do, I think it's up to us to make that happen. I would suggest that if this is a property that does interest you, that you go to this tweet by Don Coscarelli and put your comments on here and tag Dead by Daylight and Behavior to let Behavior know that this is something that you're interested in, that you want to see Jebediah Morningside, the tall man, in Dead by Daylight, because ultimately that's the way it's going to happen. Because personally, I believe that Dead by Daylight feels that this property is too niche at this point, and without an outpouring of support, I don't see that changing. Obviously, the license is clearly available, and they can get it. We just have to let Dead by Daylight know if we want it. All right, well, that's all I have for you today. Are you somebody who wants to see the tall man from Phantasm enter Dead by Daylight? Let me know in the comments down below. And don't forget that in the comments and in the description of the video, I'm going to have the link to that tweet so you can shout out to Don Coscarelli and tag Dead by Daylight and Behavior in that tweet to show your support and get the attention of these parties and bring them both together to get Tall Man into Dead by Daylight if that's what you desire. But as always, I appreciate the time that you spend here with me on my channel, and I thank you for that. And huge thank you to the sponsor of this video, Opera GX Browser and GX Mobile Browser. I don't think any gamer should be without either one of these browsers, if not both. And I'll have the link for you to download the Opera browsers in the description below as well. But that's all I have for you today. Thank you so very much for watching, and don't forget to take care of each other in and out of the fog, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye. It's a Gen Rush life for us. It's a Gen Rush life for us. Set a hiding, we do gens. Set a randoms, we got friends. It's a Gen Rush life.